Today in this video, I'm gonna show you how to take your song from being completely raw, completely unmixed, to sounding half done, 2/3 of the way done, 3/4 of the way done with only your mix bus. It is time for a refresher on top-down mixing. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Now, not only am I going to show you my entire mix bus in hardware and how I achieve it, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, I'm also going to give you plugin suggestions for every piece of gear if you want to mix this all in the box. So I'll put links down below for all of this gear, hardware, and all of my suggested plugins. Be sure to hit the links in the description if you want to check anything else out. More on that later. I think you're going to be shocked at the difference here. So let's jump into it. So here is the song with no plugins. This is not mixed. There's no reverbs, there's no effects, there's no EQs, there's literally nothing happening in this mix at all. It's just fader balanced. And I'm gonna play it for you without the mix bus, and then I'm gonna put the mix bus in, and then we're gonna break down how I got here. Here we go. So this is no mix bus. And mix bus in. Mix bus out. Mix bus in. Now I'm going to address something right out of the gate before I show you why I did what I did and how I did what I did, and that is level matching. I get comments all the time in every mix tutorial about why don't you level match, and it's because I mix on hardware. And let me show you why. I'm just going to bypass just the EQ. There's no way to level match a hardware EQ. There just isn't. And listen to the volume difference when I bypass this SPL PQ EQ. So because I came up mixing on hardware, and because I mix on lots of hardware, there is no way to actually level match every step of the process. You cannot do it. And so I have grown to this is just how I work. This is why I don't even level match when I'm using plugins, because I'm just so used to mixing on hardware where there is no real way to level match most of the time. This is just what I do. So let's just get that out of the way. I should have just not said anything, so that way the comments could have just been full of, why didn't you level match? So that way it would have increased engagement on this video. However, that doesn't mean that these techniques and these principles are invalid. If you would like to level match, by all means, level match. And especially if you're mixing all in the box and it's easy for you to level match, then go for it. I'm not against level matching. I just don't do it because I've been mixing for almost 22 years, and I've never been able to level match ever until fairly recently. So that's not how I mix. Here's what we're gonna do. Again, this song has no mixing on it whatsoever. That's just the difference in the mix bus. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bypass everything here, one piece of gear at a time, and then I'm going to, let's see, and then we're going to set all of this to unity here, so that way we can just start from scratch and I can show you exactly how I do what I do and why I do what I do. Let's see, let's mess this threshold all up. Let's change up the attack and the release, and yeah, we'll start with that. Let's do mix all the way wet, and then so now we have nothing. So that is just the mix. It's not going through any of the pieces of hardware. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna listen to the song. What needs to happen? What I find is that most productions and most songs have a general vibe to them. So because a certain producer produced it, or most of it was done in a particular studio, or someone was listening on a particular set of monitors through the recording of the whole thing, every single song that I mix, whether I'm the one that produced it or whether I'm getting it from another producer, they have an overarching theme almost always. Usually the whole thing is a little bit dark, or the whole thing is a little bit harsh, or the whole thing is a little bit muddy, or the whole thing is a little bit thin, or the whole thing is a little bit like, there's usually a really common thread throughout the entire production. And that is why I start with the mix bus. That's one of the reasons why I start with the mix bus. Now, the other reason why I start with the mix bus is because since there's an overarching theme throughout just about every piece of music, it keeps me from it. Let's say the whole thing's dark. Kind of the case with this song. The whole thing is kind of dark. All of the tracks need brightened up, and they all need some mid-range, just about all of them. And so rather than go through and brighten my kick drum up and add mid-range, and brighten my snare drum up and add mid-range, and my toms and my overheads and my bass guitar and my guitars, and this song doesn't have vocals, but if it had vocals, rather than have to make sometimes the songs that I mix are well over 100 tracks, like often actually. So rather than go through and do hundreds of points of EQ across the entire song to just get it to 0, I'll just do it on the mix bus. And this is for a couple reasons. One, speed. The fact that I can do this very, very quickly means that my perspective stays much fresher for a bigger percentage of the mix, meaning I'm making better mix decisions throughout the mix. And the other reason is for phase. Every EQ, unless you're using nothing but linear phase EQs, every EQ is using phase to adjust frequencies and cancel out frequencies. And so rather than do hundreds of points of EQ to achieve a result, if I can get there with a single EQ, or with, in this case, 5 moves on a single EQ, then that is in my opinion, that is a significantly better starting point with significantly less problems and less degradation to the audio by doing it that way. So speed and less degradation, keeping the integrity of those tracks more intact, is the reason why I use top-down mixing. And this is why I do this. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to kind of correct that. How do we get the whole mix into the ballpark from a frequency perspective where it feels done, where it is as balanced as I can possibly get it with a single EQ, in this case, my SPL PQ. Now I'm going to give a list for plugins recommendations. If you only mix in the box, you can do all of this exact same stuff in the box. I'm just using my actual mix bus chain here. So that way, I mean, this is what I actually use on a daily basis, but I'll give you guys plugin recommendations here shortly. So let's take a listen at this. Now, by the way, in the recording of this, there was no EQ used whatsoever. These are all completely un-EQ'd tracks. So let's take a listen here. Now, overall, what I hear there is a sound that needs a lot of brightening, a sound that needs some mid-range, and needs a little bit of sub-bass. That's what I hear when I listen to this. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do, now this is I've talked about this in other videos, even when I'm using the SPL PQ plugin, which I use religiously on all kinds of stuff, this is my starting point. The top band is at 24K all the way wide. The next band is at 10K most of the way wide. The next band is at 4.1K. And right up the middle as far as the Q of it, and this is my harshness band, my mid-range band at 1K, my low-end band, and it's centered at 52, but we'll see what happens. And so what I do here is, this is my air band, my top-end band, my harshness band, my mid-range band, my low band. That's always my starting place, and sometimes some of this gets adjusted on a song-by-song basis, but that is my starting place. Now, the other thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and put in my saturation. So in this case, my signature pre's, these are my Cappy runes made by Cappy. These are based on the Cappy Hider H2s. If you want this same sonic thing, you can just pick you up a pair of H2s. And put them on your mix bus. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into the flock patch, and while the song is playing back, I'm going to put these two pieces of gear in. The reason why I want these on from the very beginning is because they impart their own character. And I want to hear that character the whole time that I'm mixing. So that way I'm not doing some EQ and then I put this in and, oh, there's a little bit too much mid-range now, or the way these saturate changed the EQ choices that I wanted to make. I want my saturation, in this case, my mix pre's, my signature pre's on from the very beginning. So here we go, and I'm going to put these in. You'll see the lights go on when they come in. Put the SPL PQ in. All right, let's open this top end up. Let's get this mid-range going. I like a lot of mid-range. Let's crack the top end open at 10K. Now it's starting to sound a little bit harsh. Pull some of that harshness out. Let's pull it down to like 3K. Let's open the top end up a little more. A little bit more air. Let's get this low end thumping. That's already such an insane difference. A little bit of saturation, a little bit of size and transformer love, a little bit of EQ. That's a crazy difference. Let me bypass just that for you. Here we go. No mix bus. Mix bus. Now, when it comes to my signature preamps that I put on my mix bus, and you could do this with any preamp, anything that has transformers in it will do this. These are just the very best thing that I've ever found to do this with. The reason why I use them is it gives size, character, and apparent volume. It's literally the point to me, is that it raises the RMS or the LUFS. So I have a whole video going over my signature pre's. I'll put it in a link in the description down below. And the amount of level that you gain from just running the mix through those is absolutely insane without raising the peak level. And so for this reason, again, if you were gonna level match, when it comes to harmonics on your mix bus, you should level match with the peak level, not the LUFS or the RMS. Because when I'm putting saturation on my mix bus, literally the point is for it to get louder. That's the whole reason. So if you're level matching based on RMS or LUFS, it does nothing. However, if you compare saturation on your mix bus by using the peak level and you dial up your saturation, you can have a bunch of different saturation plugins on your mix bus and you turn them up until it's as saturated or as dirty as you can handle it being, back it off just a little bit, do the same thing to the next plugin. As dirty as you can possibly handle it, back it off just a little bit. And then when you bypass both of those and you have them the exact same peak level, one of them's gonna sound louder. And to me, this is how I compare saturation on the mix bus. The one that sounds louder at the exact same peak level is the one that's best at raising the LUFS and giving you more size with the least amount of apparent distortion. Literally the whole point of it. And so I have a whole video going over RMS, LUFS, and peak levels when comparing stuff. I'll try to link that one down below as well. But that's the reason. That's the whole point. The point is for it to get louder. But we can go a step further. We don't have compression or any other finishing saturation in yet. So I'm gonna add in the SSL Bus Plus. All right. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to set the attack and release to accentuate the vibe of the percussion that I want. In this case, I want the drums to be snappy and crispy. So I would use the attack to do that, but I don't want to use such a fast attack that it hinders and clamps down on the low end too much. So let's find and I almost always go all the way fastest on release. So let's go ahead and do that. Hear how that difference in the attack just let all that transient response, let the roundness of the drums through? Let me do that again. That's a crazy difference. 15 milliseconds on the attack is 2 clamped. Feels good. 30 milliseconds on the attack, it lets like too much of the drum through. I like the sharper attack of 20 milliseconds on this song. Yep. So that's obviously too much. Now, if I didn't have a mix knob, if I was using an SSL style compressor that didn't have a mix knob, this is about where I would leave it. However, I do have a mix knob, so let's play around with it. Set the high pass frequency. I don't want any of the low end from the kick drum triggering it, but I do like how the snare's triggering it. Dynamic EQ. Get more thump. Yeah. Okay, let's bypass the whole mix bus, see what we got. Off. Again, in case you were fast forwarding through that part, we cannot level match because most of that volume difference is coming from a hardware EQ that has no way to level match. So, SPL PQ first in the chain. I start with the Cappy runes on all the time, but the signal flow goes SPL PQ, SSL Bus Plus, then my signature pre's, and now we're going to add the MBT on this one because I want that kind of thicker, gooier low end going. Let's zero this out real quick so that way we can do it all from scratch. So here we go. Okay. The first thing I want to do is add some silk because this silk is magic. Blue silk for low end, red silk for upper mid-range. Hear how that just brings those guitars to life? Oh, so good. Yep. Bring high pass in and EQ in. Color comp, cool for some movement. Without the MBT, with the MBT. Man, okay, without the whole mix bus. Now, I would like to remind you guys that this song is not mixed. This is the very first thing that I would do on a song, on every song, is to set up my mix bus in whatever the appropriate ways are, whatever the most appropriate pieces of gear are on a song-by-song basis. But this song is not mixed. There's no EQ. There's no compression. There's no reverbs and delays. There's no nothing. This is just the mix bus. Let's hear that one more time because it's crazy. Without the mix bus, and with the mix bus. Now, yes, there is a significant jump in volume. Of course, I'm not blind to that. But the sonic character, the polish, the impact is so much greater already. And we've not done anything else to the entire song. That is unreal. Now, if I was trying to emulate this in the box with plugins, here's what I would do. So as far as the SPL PQ goes, there is a plugin version of this exact EQ, and it's incredible. I use it all the time. I use it on vocals. I use it on drum bus. I use it on mix bus sometimes if I'm just feeling froggy and I just need a little bit more EQ. So that is what I have settled on, is hands down my plug-in EQ of choice for bus duties. Next up, the Solid State Logic Bus Plus. Now, Solid State Logic themselves makes a ton of fantastic plugins, and that's a great option to go. I really also like the Universal Audio SSL plugins, but those are probably my favorite, the actual SSL plugins or the Universal Audio ones. Now, as far as my signature pre's, the Cappy Runes from Cappy, I think that the closest thing is probably the Black Box, the HG2 from Black Box. This has been one of my favorite plugins forever, for literally forever. I use it on every single mix, and it's absolutely incredible. Now, I know there is a plugin version, kind of the Rupert Neve Design MBT, and it like switches back and forth between the SSL Fusion and the MBT. I don't know what that plugin is. I don't use that plugin. I have never used that plugin, but a lot of people have brought it up in the comments of my videos. You may check that out. I think if I had to pick a plugin that I would use instead of the MBT, it would be a plugin called Alkaline by California Dynamics. This is a saturation plugin with some EQ built into it, and it's got a bunch of different types of saturation. It's a really, really well-rounded saturation plugin with some EQ, and I think it sounds really, really good. That would probably be my recommendation if I was trying to use a saturation plugin to replace the MBT. But the MBT it's a real special piece of gear. As you heard, like the silk and being able to have blue and red silk independently of each other is just chef's kiss. Now, in the heat of filming this video, contrary to popular belief, sometimes I forget stuff when I'm filming this. I didn't even put the SPL Big in the mix bus, but that's usually what I do, and I usually wait until that's the very, very last thing that I put in. The mix is done. It's completely done. And then I put the SPL Big in for width. It's just for widening, and I just crack it open. It goes to like 1 or maybe 2, and that's as much of it as I use. It's my favorite widening tool. There's a whole bunch of wideners in software, and they're all fine, but for hardware, it's my favorite one, and it's my favorite one across all the plugins as well. So apologies for forgetting that. It's not a gigantic, drastic difference in the way that I use it. I just crack it open, just pushes the stereo image. It literally just does that. It goes from here to here. And I really like doing that, but apologies for not including it when I had everything set up to film the video. Sometimes I feel like a newbie filming these videos. I still don't really know what I'm doing. Now, this technique that I explained in this video is called top-down mixing. It's when you process your mix bus first, and then you move down to your buses. So most often, if there's real drums, I would then move down to the actual drum bus. And then I would EQ and compress my drum bus. I would group all of the drum shells, snare, kick, all the toms, and the overheads. Usually I'll leave the drum rooms out of my drum bus, and then I would EQ and compress that as well. And then from there, I always go kick, snare, even if it's in pop, whatever the kick sound and whatever the snare sound is, whether it's claps or snaps or whatever, I go kick, snare, and then I do whatever the bass thing is, whether it's synthesizers or 808s or bass guitar. I do kick, snare, synthesizers, 808s, bass guitar, whatever, and then lead vocal. And that is how I start my mix. I want the percussion thumping, I want some low end in there, and I want those vocals to just start singing. And that is how I start my mixes every single time. Now, what I put on my mix bus changes slightly depending on the song and the genre. That mix bus that you just saw is what I use for probably 70 or 80% of my mixes. The SPL PQ is on every single song. The SSL Bus Plus is on every single song. My signature pre's are on nearly every song except the cleanest of pop. If I'm doing a straight pop song that is very clean and very punchy, then I tend to use a lot less saturation. And so sometimes my signature pre's will not make it on that kind of stuff. And then the Rupert Neve Design MBT is one of my very favorite saturation tools. However, occasionally it's the slightest bit too gooey. It's the slightest bit too round sounding. That's the reason why I like it on almost everything, but occasionally I go with the SSL Fusion instead because it's just tighter. It's just more, it's just a little bit tighter. I don't know how else to describe it. The saturation in the SSL Fusion is a little more granular, a tiniest bit more fuzzy in the way that the SSL saturation is, but I mean that in a good way, not in a bad way. And again, on the cleanest of pop, I often will not use either of them. But most of the stuff that I work on, 80% of the stuff that I work on has real drums, and to me, that's the differentiator. If it has real drums, that's pretty much the mix bus that's happening. If it has programmed percussion, not programmed real drums, but like, you know, fake kicks, 808 kicks and stuff like that, then I tend to just use the SPL PQ and the Bus Plus. But outside of that one tiny specific genre, that's my mix bus on almost everything. There are links in the description down below for every single piece of hardware that I just showed and talked about, and every single plugin that I recommend and talked about, in addition to links for every other piece of gear that I use, and those links go to Sweetwater. So anytime you guys need any piece of musical gear whatsoever, you can jump on any one of my videos, click on the links in the description of any video, and once you're on the site, you can purchase anything you need, and it costs you nothing extra. But when you do that, it goes a long ways to help support this channel, help me keep making videos just like this. So thank you so much, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video and making all of these videos possible. And thanks to you guys for using those links anytime you need to purchase anything. I really hope you enjoyed this. I really hope that this helped you. I hope this gave you some things to think about, experiment with, and let me know in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.